Today, day 3 of Citizen Week, we're going to learn about how citizens can fight back. We've learned that it's the government's job to protect people, but in the past, it hasn't always happened. We've had African Americans not getting equal rights with white Americans, and we've also had women being denied the right to vote on the leaders that have power over them. So there's been times in the past where the government has not done what it needs to do to protect the people, and the people were responsible for being courageous and stepping up and fighting back against those problems. Today we're going to talk about how citizens fight back against those problems. So we talked about the problem we call segregation, and segregation is like separation between different people based on their race. So in the past, there used to be restrooms for white people and restrooms for black people. Black people used to have to sit at the back of the bus. Sometimes they were not even allowed in businesses. And you see, it also says Mexicans. You know, Spanish speakers from other countries were also discriminated against. So in some places like Texas and California, you had laws about Spanish or Mexicans being in certain businesses or buildings. Now, Martin Luther King fought back against these problems. Those different problems against segregation, against African Americans, and there were also Spanish-speaking Latino activists who fought against segregation of Mexican Americans and some of their rights as citizens. Now, we're going to look at the ways that they fought back and ways that people can fight back against these types of problems and against these injustices. So how can citizens fight back? We're going to fill in the first part of your worksheet. The most important way is to vote. If citizens are old enough to vote, they need to vote on leaders that will protect them. If their leaders aren't protecting them, they need to vote on someone else. So citizens need to vote so that we have good leaders. That means lawmakers and presidents and governors. We can also write a petition. A petition is a written request or complaint, and one of your rights is to give the government your complaints. Now, oftentimes, petitions are even more powerful when you get many people to sign them. And actually, nowadays, instead of just doing it on paper, people can do it on the computer. And here's a site, change.org, where people start petitions to try and fix problems. Okay, so this one is talking to the House of Representatives, the legislature, the lawmakers, and they're asking for more laws to help stop gun violence. They want guns to be harder to get. And they're writing a letter about what they want and how they want the problem fixed. And here's their letter, and here's how you can sign it. This is one of the ways that citizens can make a difference and fight back. Now, let's go on to other ways. This is one that we've talked about before, and we've seen in the civil rights movement for African American rights. Peaceful assembly, organizing a discussion, a march, or a rally. Martin Luther King did a lot of this. This is a picture of a huge rally and march that he planned to show the government that people are serious about this problem and they're willing to get out on the street and do something about it. This is one of the rights that you have and one of the ways that you can fight back. Now, another way that people sometimes fight back, but is really problematic, is violence. And these can include riots, where big groups of people do a lot of damage and sometimes commit violence against each other. So here's a picture of a very old riot. This is a picture of a newer riot that happened here in America. Now, violence is problematic because there are oftentimes big consequences for the violence that people inflict upon their communities. And some of those don't always solve the problem that they're looking to solve. It's important that people stand up and fight back, but it's important to also look at the consequences and how effective each of these different ways of fighting back are. Now, there's also another way that people can fight back, and that's people standing up to businesses. Remember our problem of coastal erosion in Louisiana, how we're losing land? This is about 200 years ago. This is, about 50 years ago, and it's only getting worse. Our land is only getting worse. We're losing land, and this is mostly because businesses are cutting canals in the land, and that's causing our land to break apart. How can people stand up to businesses that don't do their job in keeping the community safe? Well, the first thing is demand help from the government. They need to elect leaders who are willing to stand up to businesses and pass laws that will stop them from harming communities. Another thing people can do is organize a boycott and a protest where they refuse to do business with a certain organization and they make it public. That means that they won't buy a certain product or they won't shop at a certain store. People in the civil rights movement fighting for African American rights did this too. If a store wasn't going to give equal rights to whites and blacks, then it said, don't buy here at this store. They refused to do business at this organization. Another thing that you can do is a petition, a written complaint, like we talked about earlier. Another way that people can stand up to businesses is a strike. Organize the workers to refuse to work for that business. That's one of the most powerful weapons because that takes away all of their power if they don't even have what they need to sell to people, what they can hold over people. So these are different ways that people can stand up to businesses. You're going to finish the rest of your worksheet on your own, and we're going to start on a new topic next week.